I've been excited about this conversation since I've read the story. Bill Gates is a Republican Maricopa County Supervisor. He'll be out of office in a couple of months, and he is going to lead the new university at ASU, the University Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory. He joins us now to discuss it. Bill, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Let's talk about this switch for you. How are you excited about this? Is this a way for you to take the negative things that have happened and maybe turn them positive?
It really is. I'm very excited about this opportunity where, number one is going to be training that next generation of elections administrators. We've had people who have left the profession either because of the threats and harassment, and thanks, Mike, for the coverage you've given on that over the years, but also just demographic changes. People are retiring. So I think we've got a really unique opportunity right now with all the interest that we have in elections. I mean, it's sort of a historic level of interest. And I can tell you over the past few years, I've had young people come up to me when I've spoken at universities and other places and told me, I want to get into a career in elections administration. We never heard that before. Before, it used to be kind of made a wrong turn, ended up in elections administration, and eventually loving the profession. But now people are thinking about it as a way of life.
Can you tell us how this came about? Did you approach someone? How did this happen for you?
Yeah, we had, we sort of had I sat down with Dr. Crow and kind of talked about this vision. I felt that this was the right place for it to happen in Maricopa County, with all of the us being sort of a focal point of elections over the past few years. We have a long tradition going back to Helen Purcell as our recorder. And then with all of the different, court challenges we've had that have played out in Arizona. And then finally, just given the fact that Arizona State University has this innovative approach to higher education, it seemed like a perfect fit.
This is a bit of a off topic, but the legacy of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, at least in recent history, has got to be the fact that you have moderated the tax base, the tax rate on property taxes, but you don't have any debt. At a time where we're looking at governments in massive debt at the federal level, the state balances its budget by constitutional directive. But what you've done at the county in this massive growing county has been nothing short of spectacular, and yet it seems like that has been overshadowed by this election stuff. Do you wish it weren't?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, thanks for saying that, Mike. And my colleagues and I can't take all the credit for the fiscal discipline. This is something that was set in motion by our predecessors, people like Betsy Bayless, Jan Brewer, Andy Kanasic, and others. And we've continued that, and I'm so proud of that. And I love getting to go out and talk about it in the community. But look, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much attention. And you're right that unfortunately, a lot of the attention has been on elections. And I wish that people could have heard the story about it. But in the end, what matters is that this approach that we've taken of fiscal discipline, I would say, has helped to lay the foundation, along with many other things, for the amazing economic growth we've had in this county over the past few decades.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think that is a huge part of it. When it comes to the Democracy Lab, what are the goals and what are your expectations?
So the goals, number one, to help train that next generation of election administrators. Two, create a place where people can come regardless of their perspective, their ideological perspective, or even how they feel about elections, but where people can come together and have a conversation. That's the problem. We've stopped having a conversation across the lines. We're in our silos, and hey, you know what? It makes me feel good to go and talk to a group that thinks that we're running safe and secure elections. And I like doing it, but how does that move the ball forward? We need to, in this laboratory, get people who have real concerns about the election, come in, talk to them, answer their questions. And then also, too, another goal is to do research and get even better. We feel like we run good elections, not only in Maricopa County, but across the country. But we want to do better. So we're going to do research into new areas where we can make it more efficient. We can improve the voter experience. That's going to be a big piece of it. And then finally, providing additional education to those who are already in elections administration, giving them the latest and greatest. So, we've got a lot of different goals, but I believe that we can accomplish all of them.
Bill Gates is joining us. He is a Republican Maricopa County Supervisor. He is also going to head up ASU's University Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory, and that's what we're talking about. So do you believe that those constructive conversations can happen based on what's happened to you, based on the vitriol and the things that have been said, based on what we're seeing in the news with election violence and threats on both sides? Is it possible to have those people that disagree so vehemently in a place where you can have reasonable and constructive conversations?
I understand that it's not easy and some people will not be open to it, but I know that there are people who are, and we need to swing the doors open. We need to invite them, whether we're talking about, students in their 20s who are just starting their education here at ASU, or if they're lifelong learners, who are retired now. And actually, I think bringing those two groups together, which ASU is really good at, can help with this conversation. And I think they can learn from one another. But look, Mike, we can't just give up and say, boy, this has been really tough and we're dug into our silos, so this is just how it's going to be forever. I reject that, and I think a lot of Americans do.
With your experience, when you read the stories just that have come out in the last couple of days about what's happened, what's your message to the electorate at large, but to the people that are out there contemplating or actually making threats and committing acts? What do you make of all of this, and what do you say to these people?
Well, first of all, people who are making threats, via email, on social media, or over the phone, that when you cross that line into it being no longer free speech and becoming a crime, that's a crime. That's a real thing. Those have been prosecuted. Now, I don't say that to threaten people or to intimidate them, but they need to think about the fact that these words can have consequences. At this point, we shouldn't be focusing on threatening elections officials or even candidates. We should be focusing on right now, get out there. If you've got candidates you believe in, go do a phone bank, go knock on doors. There are so many different ways that you can get involved. I mean, think about it. Most of the United States is frankly being ignored by the presidential candidates. We're fortunate. I know maybe not everyone feels that way, but I believe that we're fortunate that we are one of the top states that they're focusing on. Take advantage of this opportunity. Be a part of a historic moment in our in this republic.
Do you believe that the people that make these threats don't understand the gravity of what they do to the person that they're threatening, that the long-term effects on someone and their families? Do you mind talking about that what it does, that this is not just something that rolls off someone's back?
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And, I've been open, Mike. I've talked to you about it on this show and elsewhere, the impact that this trauma has had on me. I don't say that to play the victim card at all. I do it so that people understand that there are literally thousands of other people in elections or other elected officials who are dealing with the same things. And we need to have a conversation about it. And also we need to recognize that many of us have families. And even if we can handle it, think about how that impacts the children. And this is the bottom line, is whatever we say and whatever we put out there on the internet, young people are watching it and they're going to model it. And for those of us who are a little bit longer in the tooth, let's think about, is that the message we want to send to them? And is that the sort of behavior that we want them to be modeling? I doubt that that's how many people feel out there. I understand people are passionate. They feel strongly. They feel like this country is in crisis. And I respect that. But let's address that and let's make a difference by advocating for a certain position on propositions, advocating for certain candidates, as opposed to attacking elections officials. Again, that's like screaming at the ref. That's like calling the ref names. I mean, it might feel good for a second, but what does that accomplish? Isn't it a lot better to be cheering your team on? Isn't that more fun when you go to, the ball game? Let's try and apply that same principle as we get through the last couple of weeks of this election.
Bill, I appreciate and I admire your candor about what's happened. I think you have been a huge asset to the county with your job as a supervisor. I wish you well in your new role. And I hope you'll come back on the show many times to talk about your experience as a supervisor, but this new endeavor. And I congratulate you and I appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for having me on, and love to be on again in the future.
All right, that is Bill Gates joining us for a few moments.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.